Welcome to the English Hustle Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Maria. Today we're taking you on a journey through the exciting, sometimes hectic world of airports.
That's right, Maria. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or preparing for your first flight, this episode is packed with useful tips and insights to make your airport experience smoother.
We'll be covering everything from arriving at the airport and checking in, to navigating security, finding your gate, and finally, boarding the plane.
And we've got plenty of stories and personal anecdotes to share along the way, so you'll get a real feel for what to expect at each step.
By the end of this episode, you'll have a much better idea of how to handle your next trip to the airport with confidence and ease.
So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's topic, at the airport. So, let's start with the very beginning of the journey, arriving at the airport. Maria, how do you usually get to the airport?
I usually take a taxi or an Uber. It's convenient, especially if I have a lot of luggage, but there are so many options depending on where you are and what your budget is.
Absolutely. There's public transportation, like buses or trains, which can be really cost-effective, especially in major cities. Some airports even have dedicated shuttle services.
Right, and then there are those who prefer driving themselves and parking at the airport. Long-term parking can be a good option if you're going away for a while, though it can get a bit pricey.
True. And speaking of parking, it's always a good idea to check the rates and availability online before you head out. Some airports even offer discounts if you book in advance.
That's a great tip. Once you actually arrive at the airport, what's the first thing you notice, Alex?
For me, it's the hustle and bustle. There's a certain energy in airports, people rushing to their gates, the announcements, the sound of rolling suitcases. It's like a microcosm of the world in motion.
Exactly. And it can be a bit overwhelming, especially if it's a large international airport. But there's also a sense of excitement, knowing that you're about to embark on a journey.
Absolutely. One thing that can help is arriving early. It gives you time to get your bearings, find your check-in counter, and not feel rushed.
Yes, and speaking of first impressions, I always look for information desks. They can be a lifesaver if you're unsure where to go or need directions.
Totally agree. Plus, most airports have clear signage, but having a map of the airport on your phone can also be very handy.
Definitely. So, to recap, getting to the airport can be done in several ways: taxis, public transport, shuttles, or driving yourself. And once you're there, take a moment to soak in the atmosphere and find your bearings. It sets the tone for the rest of your travel experience.
Great points, Maria. Next up, we'll dive into the check-in process. Stay tuned. All right, now that we've arrived at the airport, let's talk about the check-in process. Maria, do you prefer checking in online or at the airport?
I usually check in online. It's so convenient. You can do it from your phone or computer up to 24 hours before your flight. How about you, Alex?
Same here. Online check-in saves a lot of time, plus you can often choose your seat and sometimes even upgrade your flight.
Exactly. But for those who don't check in online, there are still plenty of options at the airport. Let's talk about self-service kiosks.
Self-service kiosks are fantastic. They're usually located near the check-in counters and are pretty easy to use. You just need your booking reference or a frequent flyer card.
Yes, and the kiosks can print your boarding pass and baggage tags, which leads us to the baggage drop. How does that work, Alex?
Once you've got your boarding pass and baggage tags from the kiosk, you head to the baggage drop counter. There, an agent will weigh your bags, make sure they're tagged correctly, and send them on their way.
Exactly. And now let's role-play a check-in scenario to give our listeners a better idea. Good morning. Welcome to the self-service kiosk. Do you need any assistance with checking in today?
Hi! Yes, I've never used one of these before. Could you help me?
Of course. Let's start by entering your booking reference number. Great. Now select your flight. Here's your seat. Would you like to change it?
I think I'll stick with my seat. What's next?
Next, we'll print your boarding pass and baggage tags. How many bags are you checking in?
Just one.
Okay, here are your baggage tags. Attach this to your suitcase handle and then proceed to the baggage drop counter. Here's your boarding pass as well. Have a great flight.
Thanks so much for your help. And that's pretty much how it goes. Pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it.
Absolutely. So, to summarize, you can check in online or at the airport using self-service kiosks or the traditional check-in counters. Don't forget to drop off your baggage if you have any, and you're good to go.
Exactly. Coming up next, we'll guide you through the security check process. Stay with us. All right. Now that we've checked in and dropped off our bags, it's time for the security check. This is often the part that makes travelers the most anxious. Maria, can you walk us through what to expect during security checks?
Sure, Alex. Once you get to the security area, you'll need to show your boarding pass and ID. After that, you'll head to the screening line. Here, you'll need to place all your carry-on items, including electronics and liquids, into bins for X-ray screening.
That's right. And don't forget about your shoes, belt, and any items in your pockets. These also need to go through the X-ray machine.
Exactly. You'll also walk through a metal detector or a body scanner. It's important to follow the instructions given by the security officers to make this process as smooth as possible.
Good point. So, Maria, what are some of your best tips for passing through security quickly?
First, I always make sure to wear slip-on shoes. It makes taking them off and putting them back on much faster.
Great tip. What about electronics and liquids?
For electronics, I pack all my devices in an easily accessible part of my bag so I can quickly remove them for screening. And for liquids, I use a clear, resealable plastic bag and keep it at the top of my carry-on.
That's smart. What about clothing and accessories?
I avoid wearing too much jewelry or anything with metal, and I also try to avoid belts. It's also helpful to have a small pouch or bag for items like your watch, keys, and coins so you can quickly place them in a bin.
Those are excellent tips. Anything else to keep in mind?
Yes, always be prepared and stay calm. Have your ID and boarding pass ready. Listen to the instructions from the security officers and try to be as organized as possible.
Thanks, Maria. To recap, during the security check, expect to remove shoes, belts, and items from your pockets and place all electronics and liquids in bins for X-ray screening. Wearing slip-on shoes, packing smartly, and staying calm can help make the process faster and smoother.
Absolutely. Up next, we'll talk about navigating the airport to find your gate. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Now that we've made it through security, it's time to find our gate. Navigating an airport can sometimes feel like a challenge, especially if it's a large one. Maria, what's the first thing you do to find your gate?
The first thing I do is look for the airport directory or map, which is usually displayed right after the security checkpoint. These maps are really helpful in getting a sense of the airport layout.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check the flight information displays. These boards show the departure gates and times and are updated in real time.
Right, Alex. Once you know your gate number, just follow the signs. Airports usually have clear signs with directions to different gates, and they often include estimated walking times, which is really handy.
That's a great point. And along the way, you'll pass by various amenities and services. Most airports have a wide range of food options, from quick snacks to sit-down restaurants, as well as shops for last-minute purchases.
Yes, and don't forget about lounges. If you have access, lounges can be a great place to relax before your flight, offering comfortable seating, Wi-Fi, and complimentary refreshments.
Definitely. Now, Maria, you mentioned you once got lost at an airport. What happened?
Oh yes, that was quite an experience. I was at a huge international airport for the first time, and I got completely turned around after going through security. I couldn't find my gate and started to panic.
That sounds stressful. How did you eventually find your way?
Well, after wandering around for a bit, I found an information desk and asked for help. The staff there were very friendly and gave me clear directions. They even marked my route on an airport map, which made things so much easier.
That's a great reminder to not hesitate to ask for help if you need it. Airport staff are there to assist travelers, and using the information desks can save you a lot of time and stress.
Exactly. And now I always make sure to give myself plenty of time to find my gate, just in case I get turned around again.
So, to summarize, when finding your gate, use airport maps and directories, check flight information displays, follow the signs, and don't hesitate to ask for help if needed. And take advantage of the amenities and services along the way.
Absolutely. Next up, we'll discuss the boarding process. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Now that we've found our gate, it's time to board the plane. This process can vary a bit depending on the airline, so let's break it down. Maria, can you start by explaining the concept of boarding groups?
Sure, Alex. Most airlines organize passengers into different boarding groups to make the process more efficient. Typically, these groups are called in a specific order, starting with first-class and priority passengers, then families with small children, followed by general boarding, which is often divided into zones or groups.
That's right. The idea is to reduce congestion in the aisle and make boarding smoother for everyone. It's important to listen for your group to be called and have your boarding pass ready.
Yes, and speaking of being ready, it's a good idea to have your boarding pass and ID easily accessible. Some airlines require you to show both at the gate, while others may only need your boarding pass if you've already passed through security.
Definitely. Now, let's talk about what to expect when boarding. Maria, what are some differences you've noticed in boarding processes between various airlines?
Well, Alex, some airlines are very structured and strictly follow the boarding group system. For instance, major carriers like Delta and United in the US will have clear announcements and signs indicating which group is boarding. On the other hand, budget airlines like Southwest use an open seating policy where boarding groups determine the order in which passengers enter the plane, but seats are not assigned in advance.
That's a good point. With Southwest, for example, passengers line up according to their boarding group and then choose any available seat once on the plane. It's a bit of a free-for-all, but it can be efficient if everyone cooperates.
Exactly. Another difference is seen with international flights. Airlines like Emirates or Singapore Airlines might have a more luxurious boarding process for their premium passengers, including separate boarding lanes and even dedicated boarding lounges.
And don't forget about low-cost carriers in Europe like Ryanair or EasyJet. They often board from both the front and rear of the plane simultaneously, which can speed things up, but can be a bit confusing if you're not used to it.
Yes, and regardless of the airline, once you're at the gate, it's important to pay attention to the announcements and watch the screens for any updates or changes.
So, to recap, boarding typically involves different groups based on your ticket type and other factors, so listen for your group and be ready with your boarding pass and ID. The process can vary between airlines, so it's always a good idea to familiarize yourself with the specific procedures of the airline you're flying with.
Absolutely. Coming up next, we'll share some airport tips and tricks to make your travel experience even smoother. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Now that we've covered the boarding process, let's dive into some airport tips and tricks to make your travel experience even smoother. Maria, let's start with packing efficiently. What advice do you have?
One of my top tips for packing efficiently is to use packing cubes. They help keep your items organized and can save space in your suitcase. Also, try to pack versatile clothing that you can mix and match, and roll your clothes instead of folding them to save space and reduce wrinkles.
Great tips, Maria. Another thing to consider is keeping your essentials in your carry-on, like a change of clothes, medications, important documents, and any valuables. This way, if your checked luggage is delayed or lost, you'll have what you need.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about managing layovers. Layovers can be a bit of a hassle, but they don't have to be. One of my favorite tricks is to research the airport in advance. Many major airports have great amenities like showers, lounges, and even sleeping pods that can make a long layover more bearable.
That's a great idea. Another tip is to use layover time to explore the airport's dining options. Some airports have fantastic restaurants and cafes, and if you have enough time, you can even leave the airport to explore the city. Just make sure you have enough time to get back through security.
Exactly. And for those long waits, staying comfortable is key. Always carry a neck pillow, a good pair of noise-cancelling headphones, and a portable charger for your devices. It can also be helpful to download some movies or shows, or bring a good book to pass the time.
Definitely. Now, let's share our top 3 airport hacks. Maria, what's your number 1 hack?
My number 1 hack is to bring an empty water bottle. You can fill it up after passing through security to stay hydrated without having to buy expensive bottled water at the airport.
That's a great one. My top hack is to sign up for TSA pre-check or global entry if you travel frequently. It can save you a lot of time at security.
Absolutely. My second hack is to use airline apps. Most airlines have apps that let you check in, get real-time flight updates, and even access entertainment during the flight.
Good point. My second hack is to always have a travel-sized toiletry kit in your carry-on. It's handy for freshening up during long layovers or after a long flight.
And my final hack is to dress in layers. Airports and airplanes can vary in temperature, so having layers allows you to adjust to your comfort level easily.
Great advice. My final hack is to join a frequent flyer program, even if you don't fly often. The points add up over time, and you can often get perks like free checked bags or priority boarding. So, to recap, packing efficiently, managing layovers wisely, and staying comfortable during long waits can significantly improve your airport experience. And don't forget our top hacks. Bring an empty water bottle, use airline apps, dress in layers, and consider frequent flyer programs.
Absolutely. We hope these tips help you on your next trip. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of the English Hustle podcast. Today we covered everything from arriving at the airport to boarding the plane, and we hope you found our tips and insights helpful.
Until next time, safe travels and happy learning.